sort of numerical values or the numerical formulae or like this uh, to see what is the prediction there. But definitely, whenever we go for these things also, we will have to see whether all the things are what are the assumptions we have made and whether the assumptions are appropriate or not. So basically, I just wanted to say some one example. Say, suppose capacitance, parallel plate capacitance. This parallel plate capacitance, we know that we have studied this from our school days or like this there, that if we have two parallel plates with a gap of say d here, okay, and say suppose this length is 2a and width, actually I am showing you the front view, so width is w which is inside that one, so that the area is equal to 2a into w there. So we know the first approximations is that C is equal to epsilon into A divided by D, where that, so it is epsilon into 2A into W divided by D there. But these are fast approximations, or rather I will say it is crude approximations there. So what are the assumptions for it? That is, first of all, we are neglecting fringe effect, and that's why that length L, sorry, length 2A and width W, they are far more than D. So compared to the gap, this length and width is far more, so that we say that the fringing effect is negligible there. Next also, so we can say the fringing effect or say no fringing effect. We don't consider that. Next we say the strips lie on the same plane. This is a planar structure. So both of them, these two strips, all do lie on the same plane. But if they are making some angle, they are not in a planar configuration. So we don't have any E there. Similarly, thickness of the strips are negligible. So what is thickness of the strip? I just say this is your H. This is your H. So these two are negligible. So naturally, for a big size plates and etc., this parallel plate assumptions which you often do it, it is quite okay matching or like this, and obviously there would be some stray capacitance. Right now I am not going to the stray capacitance part, effect of other electrostatic field or like this, but the major thing is that I just consider that this plate is wide enough and long enough compared to the gap, and also the thickness of the plate, each plate is very negligible. And the third one is that both of them lying on the same plane. But often we will find several configurations or several geometries where these assumptions cannot be satisfied. Maybe the things are very small, the size of the capacitors they are very small, or maybe they are not planar and all. So this set their assumptions we are making it, this may not be valid. So naturally, what could be the A there? What could be the solution there, and how would you find out there? So there are, in fact, in the same way we found out this A there, C is equal to epsilon A by D. If we go for extending that one and including the effects of fringing effect and all other things, assumptions there, you can say that when A and H are comparable, that means this length and H are not very A there. So it's a very small capacitance and this is their comparable. We will find this C comes to be is equal to 2 into A into W into epsilon divided by D. So this was the primary one. But there are a set of correcting factors. 1 plus D divided by twice pi A into log natural twice pi A divided by D plus D divided by twice pi A into 1 plus 2H by D plus of 2 root over H by D plus H square by D square, etc. So this is the formula, and this can be, I am not showing actually in some papers or some books, I am just from the one book I am giving that final result there, that you see that whenever we neglect H and we neglect these things where it comes to be simple parallel plate approximation there. But H and other things are basically the fringing effects and etc. If we consider, then it becomes to be more complicated formula. But still, we can have some analytical expressions there by going from the fundamental rules of this one, electrostatic field. We can find out some analytical expressions from where we can have the first approximation one, but more accurate approximation of the capacitor. Those cases where does not hold, we can get it like. Similarly, we can have that reference I am also giving you. This will be requiring afterwards MBOW, that is analysis and design principles of MEMS devices. Because particularly in MEMS devices, these dimensions are very small, and that's why we require spatial area. And this is Elsevier. This book we will be using afterwards whenever we discuss about the MEMS. In fact, whenever I will require some books, I will take the help of some books. I will try to give you the idea, an approximation. I mean, sorry, I will refer the books there. Okay. But things may not be always even that easy. That is, whatever I have considered, that is a planar capacitance. But if they are not in plane, then what will happen? B is another case I am saying is when strips are not in a plane. Often we will encounter this sort of situations where, because particularly the parasitic capacitance, when we try to calculate and the effects of parasitic capacitance, we will find that maybe we have some crisscrossing of two lines in a PCB. Some crisscrossing on two lines in a PCB of they are not on the same plane, and at an angle theta, and say the length is L, the width is W, the gap is G. So these are the things. We may have a longer word, but they are overlapping in two different planes are like this. Then length of L, W is the width, and gap between them is G there. Then the problem is that it is more difficult to get an analytical expressions of this. So naturally, this we need to go for simulated, and you need to use some simulation tools. What are the simulation tools? The simulation tools are basically doing some numerical one, what we call it, the finite difference method, finite element method, or basically they come from, there are several toolboxes available. We take help of them from where you just can estimate what are the things there. So you can say that for capacitance, for air, that means air is the dielectric medium there, at theta is equal to 0 degree, you get C is equal to 12.74 picofarad. For at theta is equal to 90 degree, C is coming to be 10.1 picofarad. So these things I am not going, we have not got through some analytical formulae or like this there, but these are values are calculated based on some numerical simulation. I can give you the source also, because this would be, I think this book you are familiar, those who have taken books, the course on electromagnetics, that IDA, IDA, and this is the book is electromagnetism, I think. There you will find that is nicely shown that how they do the calculations, and from there how they find out how this relationship and this values there. So we can find a numerical value. So our parallel plate capacitor, what we know so far, it's not adequate. We need to consider several cases which are more complex, and we don't have any analytical method. Similarly, sometimes with some also we can have some analytical expressions also with some assumptions and approximations and etc. another expression, examples I gave you. Capacitance between two CMOS gates close by. That means two CMOS gates are there very on a same plane. We just consider this is one plate, CMOS, maybe some metal or there, padding there, which is a smaller one, and maybe a bigger one nearby. So you may find that this in layout, you may come across this sort of situation here there, where we have got one metal pad here, one metal pad nearby, or maybe that two CMOS are there and their gates are like this there. So two rectangular one, I just say that these are L2 and this one is B2, and the spacing between them is S, and this one is bigger one is L1 and width is W1. So you can have an analytical expression. People have found out unlike this that if L2 is much smaller than L1, that means this is much smaller than this one, then the capacitance C, you can approximate it and get it analytically, that it is epsilon L2 by pi into log natural S plus B1 into S plus B2 divided by S into S plus B1 plus B2. So this is an approximately we can find out and like this there. And in fact, if this is L1 is equal to B1 is equal to say 100 micron, typical values I am giving. L2 is equal to B2 is equal to 10 micron. And say gap S is equal to 2 micron, very close by or like this there. Then C comes to be approximately is equal to 0.3975 femtofarad. Mind it, just look into it, it is 10 to the power minus 15 farad like this. But normally it is, you can say we may neglect it or like this, but whenever we are measuring a variation of capacitance in the range of femtofarad, so naturally this measurement of this one or these approximations are very important. So this is the thing here what we can say, that always whatever this formula we can get it from Baxter capacitance sensors. Yes?
These plates that you've shown are in the same orientation, right? I mean, this is the top view kind, right?
They are on the same plane. Actually, it is something that you are doing the layout.
Mm-hmm.
In a layout, how would you place those metal blocks there, metal layers there? So they are on the same plane. And so if you have some idea about how the VLSI design is been done, there are two stages. Is that first of all you design the circuit and simulate it. Actually, there is often we use it with cadence software and like this, where the capacitance and resistance and I mean,
Yes,
I
sir, I'm a little familiar with that, right? What I'm a little familiar with that. What I was trying to
like this. But
come
after
towards
that,
that.
after design, what we do it is that we need to lay out how you do
Yes,
place
sir.
it, how they are close by, how do you put the connectors. And definitely those parasitic capacitance or this sort of things there will affect the performance. That's why what we require is that a post layout simulations. A post simulation layout simulation is very important that after you design the things, how they are being, where the transistors are being placed, where the connecting wires are being placed, where the resistance and capacitance are being placed, and the parasitic capacitances are we try to find out. And these parasitic capacitances will often change the performance there. And just one example, that's what I am giving you, that this is one thing is where you can have it like that. But
So,
definitely, these formulae are not very, are often very cumbersome, and that's why we go for some numerical techniques there. So they also do some perform some numerical analysis using mostly it is in FEM, finite element method, or like this, to look out what are the parasitic capacitance and also what are the effects. So what
sir,
I
we
wanted
are,
is that this modeling is very important, and the modeling is that often we don't cannot rely on this crude approximations there. So detailed modelings are required. That's what possibly I just wanted to convey. Any questions up to this? So what we can say from our there, what we discussed in this case, there methods of modeling. So first we tried to say that this modeling is important. One is that analytical method. That means you make certain assumptions and then try to have some sort of mathematical, approximate mathematical relationship that is called an analytical method like this there. This is one thing is useful because you can choose the value of or vary the value of B1 or B2 or L2 or like this, and immediately we can have some idea how much is the capacitance is changing. But often this finding out this analytic, method is not that easy. And often these are all approximate or like this. So more accurate method, but this gives you a directly, okay, I vary by B by this much, how much C will change. I can get a direct relationship from this. But often that is not adequate, particularly in terms of accuracy and also the complexity are like this. So what we go for numerical technique. So these numerical techniques or numerical methods, I will better put it. There are many. Actually, these are the packages are now available and like this. There, one is finite difference. Number two is finite element. Another one is called boundary element. Those people who are in aerospace, those people who are in mechanical or civil, they And obviously some electrical machines and people do it more frequently, use them more frequently, but people in instrumentation also will require that thing there. So these are broadly speaking the finite difference, finite element and boundary element. Among them, finite element is more popular, and you will find a lot of packages, finite element packages are there, like COMSOL, like ANSYS, and so many things are there. But what we need is that a little bit of understanding on what is the finite element technique or for finite difference technique. Otherwise, you will be what you are using as a layman, and that is not adequate to operate it. So at least I would like to give a basic idea about the finite difference and finite element method, so that even though you use finite element package or these packages, but what are the things we need to do and how do you interpret the results that we require? Because there you require so many things you will have to input, or some they will take some often some values set internally. But whether they are adequate or not, we need to know. And so naturally, at least the basics of these techniques, which we need to study a little bit, and which I will be explaining that one. But first of all, let us try to see the analytical method, and possibly we'll take up one example to show that how the analytical method and how do you do it, the analytical method, and like this. So this will be requiring a little bit knowledge of electrostatics and electromagnetism, like this there. So naturally, I will just try to give an example for that one. This analytical method, this analytical method it is basically often uses what we call it conformal mapping. It employs conformal mapping. I think this term is known to you, but you might have forgotten what is it and like this. I will take up an example where you will be able to see that how you can use this analytical method using the conformal mapping and what is its use like. Okay. So that Saurabh Sahu, it is 8:33. Rotor eccentricity measurement. That what does it mean basically? Often, if you look at it, if those who have gone to some power plant or like this, you must have seen that there is a turbine generator unit there. It's a long, almost a 40 feet long shaft, which on which the turbine and the generator rotor and they are all mounted. More than 40 feet or like this, they are mounted and like this there. And where the turbine rotates it, while the generator from there you get electricity. So if we look at the shaft there, this is your shaft. And here, at the end, there are the supports, which is a bearing. Of course, there is not a single bearing. There are multiple bearings at different stages, but I am giving you a simplified idea. So this is a shaft here, and which is rotating, and you know the thermal power plants, this shaft rotates at 3000 RPM. So it's a very high speed RPM here, like this. But what may happen in this case is that often because of the long rotor, due to the temperature expansions or like this, or maybe the bearings are not working properly or like this, on several reasons, there may be, I am showing you a very enlarged view, some sagging of the shaft there. Some sagging of the shaft there will be occurring due to several reasons there. And as a result, what will happen is that this is, once it rotates, it causes some problem and generates a heavy vibration there. So basically, if we look at it, look at it in a complete cross-sectional view, if it is totally outside, I say consider it a circle. So initially it was the rotor was, this is your rotor. This is a concentric rotor. And it may be that one, the the CG may change. I am just okay, taking it is too much to show it like this there. Maybe this is not here. There is a sag here, or maybe at different positions there. So this we call it's an eccentric rotor. So definitely this will cause you a big problems, and as a result we need to vibrations and damage of bearing and many other cases. So early detection is very important, and see that eccentricity, and also we need to measure this. This is a frame, that is this outside. I am just showing you an imaginary frame, nothing there. So, but with respect to that one, but static frame, how the rotor eccentricity has occurred. That's what I wanted to show. So naturally, we need to measure the eccentricity and also the eccentricity. Hello. How the eccentricity, maybe what are the values of the A there, parameters of eccentricity, we need to measure them. So one method, just I will show you and explain, possibly that will be useful there. And from there, I will try to show you that how do we use conformal mapping and how to estimate the variation. I'm using a capacitance census. How can you measure it? This is your rotor. I just put it, this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. First of all, how would you measure. I will explain the measurement here. There. This is a metallic rotor, so it's a metal completely. And what I do is that there are many methods for eccentricity measurement also, there is here there, but I am just taking the course of this technique to explain the uh, basically the concentric area. So what we can say, this rotor is concentric. And what are these one? So these are the, I call it copper plates, metal plates. So just keeping a fixed gap there, I put this gap is say suppose delta. This gap is say suppose delta, which is constant over there. And I put 4 metal plates, each of width of angle pi by 2. I mean width means covering an angle of pi by 2. And say I mark it C1. C1 is the capacitance between this plate and the rotor. Rotor I can connect it. So this is the capacitance. The rotor C1 is capacitance between one segment and rotor. Similarly, we have C2, C3, C4. Okay, C2 I put it here, C3 here, C4 there. So they are very close by. I place 4 circular arc metal plates, and capacitances are C1, C2, C3, C4. All the capacitance is one metal plate and the circular metallic rotor there. So it is a concentric plate there. Okay. And the width is, so what I can say, the dimensions, the total dimension up to this, that means I make it B, and so B is the total outside diameter, radius, and delta is the width. So we have another dimension that is called B minus delta, which is actually the rotor radius there. That is the rotor radius there. Got it? So we can see that whenever it is concentric, and I measured the capacitance C1, C2, C3 and C4, all the capacitance must be same. If the capacitance, I measured the capacitance, if the capacitance is, is not the same, then it is definitely eccentric. So, but what is the level of eccentricity? What are the dimensions of eccentricity? We need to find out. And so naturally, we need to also do a little bit more analysis in this regard. So what I do is that I say, now try to draw. Of course, it is a little bit difficult to draw, but I hope, and I will try to draw it out of scale, not in scale, so that to explain you the basic things here. Okay. Okay. These are the outer one, but the inner one is eccentric, and to explain it, there, so that to have a better there, to explain it there, I just try to put it a not to scale there, which is that, say, suppose the center of the rotor and the center of this external frame, it was at the same place, but now it has got shifted to this place. So naturally, I just put it just I will try to redraw it. Okay, maybe something less where it is eccentricity is A there, it is O, and the center of the rotor has shifted to the position that is O dashed, and it is basically due to the eccentricity. And say this one, I call it the shift of eccentricity is basically alpha, and the shift angle of shift of eccentricity is equal to beta. So what I
Sir,
wanted to show that the rotor center has moved and possibly,
sir,
yeah.
this diagram that we are seeing is at the end of the shaft, right?
Huh?
Either ends.
Pardon?
This picture that you're showing
It's a cross-sectional view.
is it at the end or just in the middle type? Okay.
Okay. And any position I have given it. So all of you, please come on time. Any time you cannot enter. Anyway, I'm just warning it. Next time I will say, no, don't come. So this is the eccentric shaft. The shaft has moved it. What I wanted is that this point has gone down, I mean the center point has gone down to this one, but it cannot be only vertically downward, or it may be at any position because of the bearing adjustments and etc. So the question is that how would you, so it is C1 dashed, it is C2 dashed, this is C3 dashed, and this is C4 dashed. So the question is that, but here C1, C2, C3, C4 in this case will all be constant and the same. But here, this C1 dash is not equal to C2 dash, C3 dash is not equal to C4 dash. So naturally, there would be an asymmetry there. So the question is that whether I would use by measuring these four capacitances, I can find out what are the eccentricity parameters, that is alpha and beta. Okay, got my point? So that by measuring these capacitances, I can, and doing a little bit calculation, I can find out alpha and beta. So that is the challenge, and I am proposing, obviously it is not mine, from a paper I have given you. I think I don't have right now the reference. I can give you that one also. That here it is like that. And that too, we want to do using conformal method. Okay? Is it okay? So what we have is that at the same time, The D is the total radius, delta is the gap, so B minus delta is the shaft radius, and we say that the width of the plates is W. That means it is this one taking a cross-sectional wave, and this plate is a rectangular plate on this way, there is at least a width of W. ক্লাসে আছে একটু বাদে ফোন করছি So our eccentricity parameters are alpha and beta. Alpha, beta. Now, how would I tackle this one? Now, first of all, just consider in the concentric manner. Can you tell me what is the value of C1? Anybody? What is the value of C1 in concentric case? Just looking at it. This is the gap, I mean, dielectric is epsilon, air only, so it is epsilon 0. Anybody? What happened? No idea. Okay, then I will not tell anything. Let us try it to find out from our basic concepts. But though looking at the geometry, it is possible, and the symmetricity, it is possible to tell, and with the concept of parallel plate capacitor, it is possible to tell what is C1. But anyway, I just skip this part. I will come to the very basic things there. What I do is that we will go for conformal mapping. I think these things you are familiar with it. The conformal mapping in complex mathematics are like this, complex algebra are like this. Let us recapitulate and try to see how can you do it. So what is the conformal mapping? Say this is the thing, it is X and Y. I call it, this is a Z plane. So basically Z is equal to X plus of Gy. In mathematics book we will find it X plus IUI, but as usual electrical engineers always use X plus Z is equal to X plus Jy. And this one also we can say is equal to R e to the power J theta. Now we do this mapping. There are several types of conformal mapping, but that one mapping I am just considered, that is T is a function of Z, like this there. So from Z plane, using that one, you you could transform it to some other W plane such that it will become U plus GV. Okay, so what I am doing is that there is some X and Y plane, that is a Z plane there. I just map it, that is T is equal to Fz, this is the mapping there, and I get it W plane, this is U and it is V there. So these are the, I think now you will be able to recapitulate. And this is, there are problems of analyticity and etc. I am just keeping those things there. With this is T plus, I can map it, and using that one, selecting proper T, you can go to map this plane to this plane, every point on this plane to this every point in this plane. There are, say, on-to-one mapping, on-to mapping, and so many things are there. So choose, let fz is equal to log natural z. Okay. So this is equal to log natural, what is z? R e to the power j theta. So if it is, then what we can say, it is log natural r plus j into theta. So we say it is equal to u plus of jv. So whatever may be, it was in xy plane and this is in uv plane, and by this one we can do it. Now our question is that if we map this with these dimensions to the w plane, how it will look like? How it will look like? So try to see that word.
Sir,
Yes?
sir, value of C1, formula of C1.
Formula of C1.
Sir, yes.
We'll have to
Should I
find.
tell?
Did you find?
Should I tell, sir?
Huh?
Yeah, I have found out. Should I tell?
What is that?
Sigma naught omega pi b
Sigma
upon
not epsilon naught.
epsilon naught
Huh.
omega pi b omega
Omega
w pi b
D.
b b b
B.
b
It cannot be B, basically B minus delta. Okay. Then
upon 2 b minus delta.
to B minus delta.
Sorry, delta, sir.
Delta. Huh?
Is it correct, sir?
I think it is correct, because if you do that one, if it is complete, because the gap we are considering to be very negligible. So
Mm-hmm.
if we take it to complete parallel, two parallel plate capacitor, we can consider it this circular capacitor. Then what is your area? It is, if we consider it totally, is that twice pi into r. Huh?
Yes,
And
2 pi
so epsilon into twice pi into r
by
into the
4.
width, that will give you the area, divided by gap is delta, and obviously it is fragmented into 4 parts.
4 parts.
It is by 4, so 2 pi by 4, it comes pi by 2. Correct.
Sir, should it be b minus delta or b? Means should we take outer radius or inner radius?
Actually, you can say that one. Basically, delta is much
Negligible.
smaller than b.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is the thing. Whether it is b or b minus delta, we will be considering that. Huh? Because
Okay.
this is not very easy. We'll come to that one.
Yes.
Okay. So these things we'll first try to apply our whatever we have learned in conformal mapping to apply to the area, concentric case, and try to see what happens, and then we'll apply it to the eccentric case and try to see what will happen there. Okay. So in that case, what will happen is that how it will look like. This is your U, this is your V, and this is your W plane. And we know that Z is equal to log natural R, okay, plus of J theta. That is the thing there. So, first of all, I will try to see what will be our rotor here. How the rotor plate will be mapped. So what we see is that the angle is always changing from 0 to 2 pi or minus pi to plus pi. But this magnitude of this one remains the same as is b minus delta. Okay? So you can say it is log natural b minus delta plus of j theta. So theta will vary from 2 minus k. So what I will get is that to map the rotor, this is your rotor mapping and this is your log natural b minus delta. And we put some segments here, 0 to pi by 2, then it is pi by 2 to pi plus pi. Similarly, minus pi by 2 to minus pi. So what we will get, this is your rotor. And what we will get, how this plates will map? The plates will map definitely parallel to them. Sorry. So these are the plates there. So these are the plates there. And what is this point? This point will be log natural, plates are there, so it is B here. So this point will be log natural B here. Okay. So what is interesting is that which was in a circular one domain there in z plus xy, as z is equal to x plus jy, by applying this t is equal to log natural z, I get it basically into some parallel plate, parallel configuration or rectangular area. So what we can say that what is C1 in this case? For concentric rotor, C1 is a parallel plate capacitor, because this is your C1 here, this is your C2 there, and this is your C4 here, and this is your C3 there. Each of them is covering an angle of pi by 2. That is what we have done, but they are moving parallelly like this. So in that way, you can do a parallel plate capacitance calculation is much more easy. So you can do something there, and from there you can find out what is the capacitance C1 there. So what is the gap between them? Say suppose it is G here. So G is equal to log natural B minus log natural B minus delta. And actually there is a you can say it is equal to minus of log natural B into 1 minus, what is it? Log natural B minus, so log natural B by B minus delta. Is it like that? So here it is log natural 1 divided by 1 minus delta by B. So that is equal to minus of log natural 1 minus delta by B. Okay? And we know this our binomial expansion, log natural 1 plus x is approximately is equal to x minus x square by 2 plus of x to the power 4 by 4 minus etc. like this. So if we take the first order approximation, you get it that it is equal to log natural, sorry, it is basically delta by b. It is from this expression you get that delta by pt. So what is the value of C1? C1 is a parallel plate capacitor where G is equal to this one. So what we have is that the same thing, epsilon 0 into what is the width? Here there, width is W, angle is pi by 2 divided by what is that one? It is delta by B. So here it is, what we get is that is equal to epsilon 0 b w pi divided by 2 delta. Same thing we got it. Huh? Same thing we got it like this there. And this is required, this assumption is required because x has to be very small. And we have done it by assuming obviously delta is much smaller than BD. So we get the C1 is equal to C2 is equal to C3 is equal to C4. All together are same, and we can get a very nice one. And so a circular geometry can be conformally mapped into a rectangular geometry in the W plane there. But that is the preamble to the problem. So what is our next course? Okay, if I apply conformal mapping to this eccentric rotor, how it will map? Definitely, possibly, there would be, because it is a small angle or like this, it would be very close to this sort of there, a rectangular type of mapping. How they will be mapped, and second thing, with that one, can we approximately tell about what is the value of C1 dashed? Because C1 dashed we wanted to know. Because otherwise it's very difficult to find out any analytically what is the value. If I give you alpha and beta, what is the value of C1 dash? You cannot really find out as it like this. So our next problem is to, if we map the eccentricity, eccentric rotor, then how these things will be there, and how would you be able to map it, and from there how would you be able to measure the eccentricity by measuring C1, C2, C3 and C4. Should I give a break for 5 minutes? Okay, for 5 minutes break, we will try to see how it will be mapped, and if you want, you can try to map it also. Try the mapping also and suggest what could be the other way there. Okay? So after 5 minutes, we'll come back in 9:59. Okay, should I start? Or before that, if you have any confusion up to this, you can tell me.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So actually, this capacitance we can obtain from the coaxial equations also, sir.
Pardon?
This capacitance values we can obtain from coaxial equations like two cylindrical capacitors.
Which equation?
Coaxial, sir. Coaxial cable capacitance.
Coaxial cable capacitance. Yeah. All the things are same, basically. But our problem is the eccentricity.
Okay, sir.
So my problem, this first part is not required at all. I agree. But our problem is that, okay, this is an approach by which can we have some approximate value, knowing alpha and beta, what is the what is the value of C1 dash, so that you can go for inverse mapping, what we call it inverse mapping, by measuring C1, C2, C3, C4, whether alpha and beta can be obtained. Any other question? Is it okay?
Sir, in the eccentric rotor, what is the definition of alpha? I didn't get it exactly.
No, I am not definition. Say, suppose this one, the center of the rotor and this one and the center of this circle, the outer circle are same. But here, say, suppose this rotor has got shifted slightly to make it to O dash. I have given you, it is very small. So what I had told you, say, suppose the A there, due to the, as I told you, that it is actually bearing and like this, if there is, say, suppose sag somewhere. So if there is a sag there, the center of the rotor will not be the same position as the center of this place there, it will be shifted. I am showing it for this one is that it is shifted downward. Possibly it will come down to this one. The whole rotor will be coming down to this point there. But it is not only the sag like this, but there are several problems because of the misalignments of the bearings and etc. Because bearing fixation is very important and very critical here. So that's why I am taking a general one. The rotor has shifted, but not downward. The rotor got shifted to this one at an angle beta, and the amount of shift is alpha. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Now I come to the eccentric rotor part. Definitely it is not going to be that much easy. I will just rub it off because I need some space. For eccentric rotor, I call it C1 dashed. My primary job is to find out what is C1 dashed. And maybe if I can do it C1 dashed, I can do for calculate for C2 dashed also like this. So what we do is that, so in that case, this Z dashed, that means if it is shifted by this amount, what will be the rotor equation? That means the rotor here there. First of all, it's a circle, but shifted by from O to O dash. So what is it? This is basically alpha e to the power j beta, okay, plus of b minus delta e to the power j theta. You recall that the second term was for the concentric rotor, and because the center point has been shifted to O dash, that is alpha e to the power j beta. Alpha and beta may vary, change, but this is the thing there. Okay. Now, the question is that, so this is the equation of rotor. Now the question is that, so here it is the mapping T dashed is equal to log natural Z dashed. So what will be there? It is log natural alpha e to the power j beta plus beta minus delta e to the power j theta. Agreed? So I can write it down as equal to log natural beta minus delta e to the power j theta plus of log natural 1 plus alpha by beta minus delta e to the power j into beta minus theta. So this is possible because I simply take out b minus delta into e to the power j theta term out and I get it like this. So this part, it is basically, if we look at it, without deformation. That means without any eccentricity. And this part which depends upon alpha and beta, this is an eccentricity component. So earlier it was T is equal to U plus JV. I can say this is equal to T plus delta T, that is a variation, and delta T is equal to delta U plus of delta V. That means what we are saying that, okay, it was like this there. And this was the rotor here, like this there. So due to this deformation, this will be fixed, the plates are fixed. Due to this deformation, the rotor will not be like a straight line like this, but possibly this will be deformed, each point will be deformed by this mapping, it will be changing like this by an amount of delta y and u in the x direction and delta v into the u direction. So as a result, what may happen is that this may map. I am showing you, this is the deformed one. This map, deformed rotor.
Hello, sir.
Yeah?
Sir, that part is not visible. What you are writing on the board now.
It's not visible. This part.
Some part is not visible, sir.
Oh, thank you. So what I can do is that it was like this there. What we had is initially this was like this. That is this is your T plane or like this, the T plane I can call it. And this is U and this is V. Okay, it was without eccentricity. But if there is any eccentricity, and obviously I am assuming the eccentricity is small, what we are telling that each coordinate, here from each coordinate on these points are mapped to some points here. And it was moving in a straight line. Now due to the eccentricity, what I wanted to say that each coordinate it will retain, because this eccentricity is small, it will retain almost the same thing with a little bit of deviation. That means that due to the eccentricity, the rotor will be mapped in this way. Something like this. So that every point, you just see it, will be changing by an amount of delta u and by amount of delta v. So it is the concentric rotor and this is your eccentric rotor. Okay. So naturally our job is to find out what is the value of delta u, and from there I will try to do that thing. Is it okay? Obviously, I am giving you some deformation. I am saying this is maybe an arbitrary one, but we will see that this is the one actually it will happen. But basically, it will be, since the eccentricity is small, rotor V is very large and like this there. So it will retain this character, but maybe there would be some shift here. So if we can find out what is the value of delta u and delta v, I can do a little bit there. So what is your delta u? So delta u is equal to this part, because this is already u and v there, the real part of this one. So if we say the delta u, this is basically, okay, first of all, this one, okay, I will first write the first one. So delta u, delta t, I put it, is equal to log natural. So this is your delta t. This is a complex quantity, agreed? So I put it is that log natural r e to the power j omega. Any complex quantity can be written in this form, polar form, that's same. So this r you can find out by taking the real and imaginary parts and squaring and square root and adding and square rooting there. So based on this, it is basically, it is log natural r here. So it is, you can do the things there, but it is a little bit cumbersome. So I am avoiding the detailed calculations. I request you to check detailed calculations, and it says that log natural r is equal to half log natural, then it is second bracket, for third bracket, second bracket, 1 plus alpha by beta minus delta cos of beta minus theta whole square plus of alpha by beta minus delta sine of beta minus theta whole square. So it is something like this. This one part, one is there, and there is a real component is the cos part that I put it here, and this is the imaginary part, it is the sine part, and definitely this will be a square, and I am tweeting it to the, that is basically a square root, and that's why I put half of there. Okay. So this is your relationship. So further approximation, we can do it is basically in the same way we can do it, that is equal to, this is a cos beta minus theta, or basically theta minus beta. So we can say that beta is very small or like this. So a little bit of approximations we can say, and it is a 1 here, there. So I can do it a little bit of approximation. It is half of log natural 1 plus alpha squared divided by beta minus b minus delta whole square. Sorry, not b minus delta, not alpha. Alpha should not be there. No, alpha should be there, but I am just taking the square root. So I am neglecting that a little bit portion of it. And this is the thing there. You can plots of, 2 alpha divided by b minus delta into cosine of beta minus theta, or theta minus beta, whatever it may be. So that's the thing there. I am doing the thing, and this term square and to this term square, it becomes alpha square by beta minus delta there. And we can little bit approximate because b minus delta is very small. So alpha divided by b minus delta is much smaller than 1 because what is happening? This alpha is very small compared to the diameter and or even the gap, because it has to be much lesser than the gap, otherwise it will hit it like this. So it is very small, that one. So these things we can approximate it as equal to half of twice alpha beta minus b minus delta into cosine of beta minus theta. It's like this there. Because same way we can do the things there, we have expanded log natural c is there. So this is approximately is equal to alpha by beta cosine of beta minus theta. So the deviation in this one will be, I can calculate what is the value of delta u. Each point, what is the variation, you can calculate EADL for all the points there. And similarly, if we go for delta V, each point, how does it shift? It is, you can find out delta V is equal to tan inverse alpha by b minus delta into cosine beta minus theta divided by 1 plus alpha by b minus delta into sine, this is sine, sine of beta minus and into cosine of beta minus theta. And basically alpha is much smaller than those one, and why just approximately we can take that, and reasonably that delta V is 0. That means each point will be shifting towards right or left horizontally like this. So each point will be shifting, and that value approximately we can do the things there. I can find out what is the shift delta u into this one. So finally what we can do is that now possibly your things are simpler. Your things are simpler because now the rotor, mapping of the rotor got deformed by in this one. Each point is moving towards right or left horizontally. So what we can do now is that we take an elementary length, find out the elementary capacitance between them, and basically and integrate it from 0 to pi by 2. So what we can do is that delta C1 dashed this point was log natural, oh sorry, not this one. Log natural B, and this was log natural B minus delta there. So it was our reference point and it moved like this here. So what is the delta U we have found out? Delta C dash, C1 dash is equal to epsilon 0 W into delta theta divided by delta by B minus alpha by B into cosine sub theta minus beta or beta minus theta, all the same. It's like this here. So the same thing you can say the same way. It was delta by B but got modified by this parameter which is depends upon alpha and beta. So what we need is that C1 dash is an integration of this one 0 to pi by 2 into epsilon 0 W d theta divided by delta by beta minus of alpha by B, sorry, delta by into cosine beta minus theta. This is possible to evaluate. This is possible to evaluate for different values of alpha and beta. You can find out what is, and this is an analytical expression, which is approximately, obviously, approximate analytical expression to what is the value of C1 dash there. So naturally, this is a very important there. And similarly, we can find out C2 dash, C3 dash, C4 dash, and from there, measuring those capacitances, it is possible to find out what is the value, estimate what is the value of alpha and beta there. So definitely, this is the way we can do it here there. So conformal mapping gives you a flavor of this one analytically, approximately, how can you design the things there and how can you find out a relationship between input and output there in this way for in the sensing domain there. But only thing is that you must agree that it is tedious because I have left many steps. It is tedious and may not be always possible like this there. So we will go for A there. We will go for what we go for. We will discuss about it. How to do it, or yeah, they are using some numerical techniques. So often numerical techniques are used, and basic numerical techniques I will be telling you. Similar, actually, whatever I have done it in the domain of capacitance. Basically, the basic I have considered only electrostatics there. There could be some the problems could be not only confined to electrostatics, but often confined to electromagnetics as well. What is it? Say, suppose I can put it in this way. Say, suppose there is a crack detection. It's an important thing. Say, suppose we have because the railway track is there. Very important one is that railway track, there is some crack involved there. Very micro crack or like this. But definitely if we want to, if we allowed it to persist, this may cause some accident or like this. So basically, these are the things, it is a crack there. That is basically here there that will be using eddy current technique. Basically, many of the aeroplanes and etc., many things are there where you require a micro crack or like this there. So what we do is that suppose I am taking you the top view. So there is a crack there and A there. So what I will be, not the front, okay, the front view, okay, I will, very difficult to. So there what we do is that you place a coil plus sensor, a box or like this there, which will be moving along these things there. So what is their coil? Coil will be some excited by some AC source there. And we have a sensor, small sensor mounted on it. It could be a search coil. It could be some small IC that is called a GMR sensor or like this, which can measure the magnetic field there. So what will happen? There is some, as I move this sensor plus coil assembly over it here there, what will happen? There would be some eddy current generated because the railway track is a metallic one. There would be some eddy current generated there, and that will cause you, due to that eddy current, some magnetic field will be produced, and that magnetic field can be detected, very small, can be detected by a sensor there. But whenever there is a crack, because eddy currents are like this, eddy currents are like this there. But whenever there is a crack here, it will not be able to go there to this form. There would be a change in pattern of the induced voltage in the sensor. So by this detecting this eddy current sensor, what we can do is that there is a pattern in the voltage induced or in the sensor. We can estimate that there is a crack there. If we move along with this direction, you can also predict the shape of the crack here. But in this case, major important things are that how would you design the coil? What would be the number of turns? What current should I feed? What frequency I should give? And similarly, what should be the search coil? What should be our proper gain, appropriate gain, and etc. I need to design it. So naturally, that's for this design, we require some simulation tool or some sort of analytical tool, because that will be able to, where we can say mimic the their situations there, and we can say, we can see that, okay, I change these things, what will be the effect, and what is the best design, what is the best dimensions, I can find it out. So this sort of, if you really want to develop any sensing systems here, you need to do some sort of what we call it the modeling. And we have seen that one method of this one, which is very elegant, where you can have some approximate values there. But we can say directly map that, okay, if I change this parameter, what will be the effect in the output? We can directly get it. But it is very cumbersome. Often we go for the other techniques there. So, which are based on FEM or finite difference method or like this. But both of them, basically what I told about it, related to electromagnetism, whatever I have talked about, capacitance calculation, it was electrostatic. But if we go for this eddy current one, it would be electromagnetic. So it will be more difficult or complex than this one. So the way to tackle these situations, I will be discussing in the next class. Do you have any questions? I stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Any questions? If it is not, then I will stop here. Tomorrow I will finish, I mean, not finish, but I think I would have to continue for a year there. That will start the analytical techniques and etc. afterwards. Tomorrow we will be there, and then we will go for the numerical techniques there. But mind it, one small assignment is there. That is, Just if you want to find out, look into the literature, look into the books or like this, some newer techniques of measurement which you do not know, did not know like this, and which is interesting. Write an abstract and which you may be you want to give some lecture on it, seminar on it about 15 minutes. So it is
So
not that we will
we
be
have to
giving
mail that
on that
abstract to
topic
you?
itself. Just a minute, let me finish. On that topic itself, we may give you some more interesting topic and some more. We may also say that is not very there related to my topic or like this, which may suggest the changes. But only thing this will give you some there that okay, look into the books, look into the papers, and just try to see what work is going on. So try to do it in a very sincerely and just try to see it. But definitely you may not be, that would be the best evaluation or abstract or like this there, but just to say in your own language whether you can write on the newer things there. It should not be more than half a page, okay, 1 page maximum, not more than that. So please try to submit it next week. I think 19th is the date here. Somebody was asking some question. Please.
So that abstract you have to mail you?
Huh?
That abstract that we have to mail you?
Actually, I had given one Teams link, new.
Okay.
I think that you, did you get it?
Yes, sir.
So Karuna can tell it. So you will have to submit there. Karuna?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
So basically, there will be an assignment one which I'll post on this Teams today morning, and you can, as part of that, you can submit it on MS Teams.
Okay.
So any problem or any confusion about it, you may ask her. She will help you. But these are the things, possibly I have skipped my some equations and some steps. Try to see, it is easy to follow. It is not that difficult, only a little bit tedious calculations. But I found it very elegant. That's why I thought that, okay, let us pick this one there. And you may find many other simple techniques. Possibly I could give you some idea about why modeling is necessary, because we need to know these things there. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you all.